You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts, Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again to kick off our broadcast week here on the Options Insider Radio Network. It is time once again for the Option Block, part one of our two-part extravaganza that unfolds throughout the week. I come back on Thursday for episode 2. Of course, my name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from this fine network upon which so many of you are binging these days. We offer many ways for you guys to binge these days, of course, after the fact on your device or platform of choice. Literally, if there's a platform out that doesn't have our stuff, I don't know what it is at this point. So if you want to get it on some crazy Estonian podcast platform, hit us up. Let us know. But we're on all the big ones and a lot of the small ones too. And of course, if you want to go above and beyond, join us in the live, or of course, participate in all of our exclusive shows throughout the week, theoptionsinsider.com/secret club. Remember, just me and you talking here. And of course, however you listen live after the fact, keep hitting us up. Those questions, those comments, those insights, those pearls of wisdom. We do love to hear from all of you folks out there. Let's see who we're hearing from on the old program today. First, let's go out to the small provincial hamlet known as St. Charles. We are joined, some actually call it the land of wealth, I've heard, behind the scenes. We are joined by the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management. Uncle Mike, welcome back to the program, sir.
Always great to be here. My thought is that if Andrew and Mark get to be the land of the pit, you get to be the land of insider. Why not? I can be the land of wealth. Let's do this right.
There we go. The land of wealth indeed. And we are also joined from deep in the heart of Texas, a.k.a. the hometown of The Undertaker, also the hometown of one greasy meatball, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. Mr. Meatball, welcome back to the program to you as well.
Good morning. Happy Monday.
And since you last joined us, sir, we have made a bit of a change to our Name That 80s Wrestler theme song. We kicked it off the new year a little bit differently. It's going to be more of a buzzin' thing now. So I'm going to play the theme in a second once I set it up and intro it. And then you and Uncle Mike, instead of me choosing who goes first, because then it seems like I'm handing victory sometimes to one of you. So this time it's going to be just chime in if you know the answer. All right. So prepare yourselves, prepare your buzzers. This one's going to be a little bit more difficult. Again, we've kind of hit on all the low-hanging fruit at this point. All the big ones, your Machos, your Hogans, your Andres, all those guys are done. So we're going a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole today. So today's theme, I will accept both the name of a singular wrestler as well as effectively the name of the tag team, which was effectively the same name, just plural. So you could guess one or the other. I will accept them all. Can you name this 80s wrestler / tag team? All right, that was fast. Who you got, sir?
British Bulldog.
Wow. Yes.
Good.
The British Bulldog. Yes, Davey Boy Smith. Wow. Well done. So I thought I'd have to go a little bit longer than that. All right. Well done, Mr. Pitt. Kicking the year off strong here. Got British Bulldog, right? I also would have accepted the tag team, which was, of course, the British Bulldogs, which pretty much had the same music. And it was Davey Boy Smith and I'm blanking on the name of the other guy, but
Dynamite Kid.
There we go. Thank you. So I knew you would know that. So there you go, listeners. There you go. An oldie but a goodie as we kick off the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the trading block, the portion of the show where we do just that. We break down what the heck is trading, what is lighting up our tapes out there. And today seems like a whole lot of red back on the screen today to kick off the week. Pretty much all the major indices off a full percent, if not more. The Dow is actually playing the laggard today, only off a little over 1%. S&P off about 1.3%, and the NASDAQ closing in on 2% to the dark side. Tech names having a bit of a tough time here in this newer era of this new market here of 2022 out there. Of course, that means all of our vol friends getting a little bit frothier, a little bit heavier to start the week. VIX, when we kicked off the show, a little bit shy of the 22 handle, about 21.85 or so. That puts it up almost 3 points, about 2 3/4 points from where we were last show on Thursday. VVIX was about 123, a little bit north of that, but 123.25 puts it up about 7 1/4 points from Thursday's show. VXX, a product that's got naught but fade on it these days, getting a little bit of that fade back. A little over 20 when we kicked off the show, about 20.15. Puts it up about 1 1/3 points from Thursday's show. UVXY, a.k.a. the product that nobody seems to want to buy except for days like today when it gets its rally back. It was at about 14, a little bit north of 14 right now. That puts it up about 1 1/4 points from where it was on Thursday's show. It seemed like not that long ago it was going to be heading to reverse split town, heading to 10 and below. So back up to 14 again. And Vol Q, when we kicked off the show, of course, Vol Q, the at-the-money vol of the NASDAQ 100, was at about a 26, puts it up a little over 3, about 3.15 points. Come in a little bit since then. It's about 25.70, so a little bit shy of 3 points now, but still up from Thursday's show. All right, Mr. Meatball, you win. So that means you get to go first. So first off, do you have any enduring memories of the British Bulldog, maybe his on-again, off-again rivalry / friendship with the Hearts, or anything else that catches your memory from the British Bulldog / British Bulldogs, plural? And then B, what's lighting up your tape in today's market, sir?
I just loved his little braids that he always had. You know, he always looked like
he was ahead of his time with the braids. Yes.
Like a college girl coming fresh off of spring break from Cancun or Jamaica when they show up with the silly braids. And dude, that guy was strong. He was a big dude. I think he may have had some help in that matter because I believe he died of a heart attack. But he was a big dude. Big fan of the British Bulldog.
Are you saying an 80s wrestler may have used additional supplements to gain strength, sir? Is that what you're saying?
All I'm saying is he probably was not just taking what Frank Thomas takes.
It wasn't just prayers and vitamins?
No, it's not just prayers. Well, it was vitamins, but it was a special kind of vitamin. Big fan. Like the matches with Hart and against Hart. Those were good matches. Market today kind of funky, right? We've got a pretty ugly top line number. Amazon and Mike, I don't know if you saw this. Amazon briefly today down year over year. It's just been in a very, very difficult pattern. Looks really kind of sick. Maybe time to start dabbling in there. Apple down again, seems to recover a little bit. Even the bank stocks, which had been doing so hot, are down today. Energy off a touch. The only green spaces I see are Zynga got bought out. Andrew is taking his lap of victory. And
somewhere right now, John Griegas is smiling. He was buying all those Zynga calls like 5-8 years ago, remember?
Yes. John's happy. but some weird names. So it's all Dow stocks that are up. You got IBM, you got Intel, you got Coca-Cola, you got Merck. They're all looking strong. You know, the one theme we've seen for the beginning of the year is the Dow has absolutely outperformed the rest of the indexes, held up by energy, held up by banking, but kind of a sea of red on the individual sectors. No surprise that XLY and XLK are the two leaders lower, XLK being technology and XLY being consumer discretionary, which two big components are Amazon and Tesla. For our, we watch ARK funds to see what our high beta stocks are doing, and ARK is down 3.5%. It continues its slow grind into redemption hell, and I don't know that until that stops, none of this is gonna be real pretty. But that's kind of what's on my screens from a trading perspective today.
Before we're going out to the land of wealth, let me just check in with our chat. I love our listeners. They're just a fantastic bunch. Reminding me here that Davey Boy Smith and the Dynamite Kid were cousins, and that I should check out their high flying work they did in Japan. I will do that. I bet you that probably was some pretty impressive stuff. Interesting stuff going on in Japan in the 80s over there. Some of our other listeners saying they wanted me to keep, Mr. Unlimited, others saying they wanted me to keep playing the theme because they were having fun with it. And also to thumb their nose at the one guy who wrote in about a month ago saying he didn't like the wrestling segment. So we're not going to make fun of people who write in who don't like the wrestling segment. They can always skip ahead. He says, I hope he skipped ahead too far and then has to go back. But yes, I'll keep them playing a little bit longer next time, just for you folks out there. But yes, that was a quick get by the greasiest of meatballs. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, same question for you. First and foremost, your enduring memories of the British Bulldog / British Bulldogs. And then B, sir, what is lighting up your tape in today's market where you continue to talk down crypto, sir?
For sure. So a couple things in terms of the British Bulldogs or British Bulldog and or both. I was more of a fan of the Heart Foundation if I had to choose between the two of them back in the day.
Yeah, I was definitely a Heart guy myself.
Yeah, if I had to pick between them, and then probably the braids were hideous. In my opinion, they were awful. But the first memory that comes to mind when I think of the British Bulldog is that I have two eras of wrestling with which I consider myself an expert, the 80s and then the late 90s, kind of the early Attitude Era, if you will. And those are probably the two areas with which I feel pretty confident. I remember the Monday Night Wars, where you either watch WCW or WWF, and there's always the debate of which one was better. And then eventually WWF, of course, won out. But the one thing that really sticks out to me about the British Bulldog is when he was in WCW, he was having a feud with Steve Mongo McMichael. For those of the Chicago listeners, they know who Steve McMichael is. He was a famous Chicago Bear. He's struggling with his health right now. But when he was talking trash to the British Bulldog, he's talking about, that pumped up British Bulldog. And so, if Mongo, someone who played football in that era, is talking about someone else being pumped up, so to speak, then he's probably really pumped up. So that's probably one of my biggest memories of the British Bulldog.
Both you and the meatball implying there is something other than prayers and vitamins going on here, Jen. I'm not sure what to make of this. Hulkster told me to say your prayers and take your vitamins, so that's all you had to do.
Hey, I'll be honest. The Hulkster was a very good influence on me growing up by those words. So I'm not going to bash the Hulkster, but I do have to admit he may have done a few extra things besides take his vitamins, train, and say his prayers like he wanted all of us little Hulkamaniacs to do.
All right. I guess, sir, if you have time, we can also talk about the market if you are so inclined.
I am. All right. So shifting from wrestling and shifting back to Yosemite Sam of what I was talking about last week in terms of on the strategy block of if you have a line in the sand, don't step across this line. And I believe one of our listeners even tweeted in a GIF of the exact cartoon with which I was referencing. And so when Bugs Bunny says, "I dare you to step across this line," and then Yosemite Sam goes, "I'm a steppin'," and then Bugs Bunny keeps daring him to do so, and then of course it ends with Yosemite Sam falling off of a cliff. And today the markets are going down, and so the market it kind of stepped on my line of where I needed to roll down some puts. And so I was just thinking in this, you know what, in the spirit of Yosemite Sam and not becoming a Yosemite Sam, I'm rolling down and I'm being more cautious with this. So that's what I decided to do. And I took a little bit off the table just to be safe on some short puts, because I'd much rather not make as much money at the end of the quarter as opposed to losing money and falling off of a cliff like Yosemite Sam did. So now that we've covered 80s wrestling and cartoons, into a more relevant, even though that the 80s cartoon, even though the cartoon was very relevant, into the more specifics of the market itself. Right now, one thing I'm noticing today is that we did not have a lot of this did come actually at the open of the market. One thing over the last couple of years, we were talking about differences or newer things of 2021. It seems to me that we're getting a lot more movement during the day of markets than we have in the last 3 or 4 years. The Trump era was very gappy, from my opinion of it, to where we'd have a lot of gap ups and gap downs going into the trading day. And today, we were down going into the day, but a lot of the sell-off actually started happening, or a lot of the big sell-off, to where the first price bar of the day, we got a low of 46.33 in the SPX, and then it just continued to go down another 50 points. So we actually had a lot of selling going into the day, or starting when the market was actually open today. Whereas in the last couple of years, like I said, we've had a lot more of a gap down style of market. The other thing that I'm noticing is that it looks like, or at least based on today, that 10-year note is relatively flat on the day. So that was selling off, and that actually was selling off earlier today, but it's rallied during the day today to getting close to break even to where it was on Friday. Not quite back there yet, but we're pretty close. So noticing that. Also, just to kind of add to what Mark was saying, we are definitely getting a lot more of a sector recognition style of market. So in other words, with where we are right now, the big loser on the day right now is industrials and consumer discretionaries, just looking at XLI and XLK being the ones that are down today. XLY, technology. So consumer discretionaries, industrials, and technologies are the ones being down the most today. Financials are down today, but once again, that is what's been kind of hot recently, as well as energy. Energy is not down all that much on the day. So I think that with where we are, we held close to the 4,600 mark in the SPX today. We did drop below it for a little while, but for the most part, after we dropped below it, since roughly 10 o'clock Chicago time, the last couple hours, we've held pretty tight to the 4,600 mark in the SPX. So that's a key number. And at least for today, we'll see what the rest of the day brings. But for right now, the sell-off has kind of stopped. And the Sebastian volatility theory of that we aren't getting the second leg of sell-offs because volatility is already fairly high. And people already have their puts, so they're not doing the second panic leg of the sell-off. At least for today, that's holding true. And that's what I'm seeing.
Let's see what we're seeing out there in the major industries. By the way, Uncle Mike, I'm glad to hear that you're also a fan of early 90s wrestling, because we may have to start spilling over soon. We have
late 90s wrestling.
Oh, late 90s wrestling. Okay, because early 90s is kind of still a spillover from the 80s, and then of course we could keep going there because we kind of almost have exhausted the well of 80s wrestlers. We're getting down there.
Well, we can go with AWA and NWA if you want to expand it and keep it in the 80s.
I suppose we could. Then we're getting deeper in the rabbit hole. But we shall see. We shall find something. I could keep finding more, but they'll be even farther down the rabbit hole than Davey Boy Smith and others. But we shall see. We'll keep it rolling as we keep on going on into the markets. What's rolling right now is VIX. VIX putting up some numbers today. So it looks like that long, slow decline, actually not that slow, pretty rapid decline of the ADV out there. It's 444 right now, listeners. It was 730 or so not too long ago of an ADV. So VIX is fallen off a cliff from a volume perspective last couple of weeks. Getting some of that back today. 366,000 contracts on the tape right now. So probably going to hit past that 444 level, listeners. SPY just on fire right now. 4.75 million. The ADV is pretty much right there. It's about 4.8 million right now. So spoiler alert, it's going to hit that today. The S at already 1.35 million. If it's over a million by this time of the day, you know something's up. And right now there's some paper. ADV a little bit shy of 1.5 million. That's going to be ticking up as well. And small caps, 545,000 contracts already. That's a day's worth of volume in IWM. At least it used to be a few months ago. The ADV now is 785. That has come back from the just stratospheric over 1 million level it was not too long ago, but probably going to be hitting north of that today. Let's see what's going on from a single name perspective. Cost you 302,000 to break into the top 10 today, listeners. So you know that's a pretty serious day when we're over 300K in the single names. That gets you to Tilray. Tilray back in our top 10. I haven't talked about them in a while, of course, out there in the Canadian cannabis side of the fence. Apparently they posted a not as bad as expected loss out there, even though this chart, looking at it over the course of the past year, is pretty catastrophic. A year ago, they were 1233. They're 720 or so right now, listeners. They were 1233 a year ago. They got up to $67 in the height of the meme mania in February of last year, listeners. And so needless to say, it's been pretty much just nothing but downside ever since that 67 level. Got down to a 52-week low just recently in the last week or so of 629. Actually, I think that was about exactly a little less than a week ago. So has rebounded from there, but still a long way from those levels. Will other ones like Sundial and others follow suit? I don't see them in the top 10 today, so we shall see. Number 9, we've got Bank of America at 308,000. You know, financials are due to pop off as we kick off another round of earnings seasons ahead of us. Number 8, our old friend Palantir hanging out back in the top 10 again, 314,000. Let's see where our old friend Palantir is hanging out right now. 1598, off about 60 cents today. This one, of course, has had an interesting trajectory over the course of the past year. Like many of these names, it hit its apex in the meme frenzy. Actually made it by late January. Didn't even wait till into February. Hit about $45 back in late January, and obviously never really threatened those levels again. And right now hanging out pretty much right at, it looks like it hit its 52-week low today at 15.35. So about $16 right now, has rebounded off those, but rough times here for Palantir. Mr. Meatball was just talking about our old friend Zynga. They are in the top 10 today at number 7. When's the last time we talked about Zynga in the top 10? Probably not since the primordial ooze days of this show. Stock getting a nice pop today, about $8.50, up about $2.50, or a good 41% today. That's not bad. That's also good for number 7, 325,000 contracts. You know what? All that said, though, it's still below where it was trading a year ago. It was trading $9.61 a year ago. Got up to $12.32 in the meme madness. And obviously never really threatened that again. Was looking pretty dire. It was down to its 52-week low of 557 back at the end of last year, beginning of this year, before all this M&A activity carried it back up. So nice little pop today for Zynga. Number 6 is Lucid. They've been a top 10 frequent offender of late. They have 362,000 contracts. Number 5 is AMD. Only one half of the symbol twins in our top 10 today. And it's not the one you'd expect. It's not AMC. It's AMD. AMD is a perennial top 10er now, even though AMC only once in a while kind of peeks its head in. Number 5, AMD, 403,000 contracts. Number 4, it's our old friend Ford. Ford, just the new darling out there, having an awesome, amazing start to the year. Giving some of that back today, off about 3.5%, down to about, a paltry 23.60. This thing was $12 or below it not too long ago. 471 is the volume for Ford today. Number 3, we got NVIDIA. You know they're up there. It's a day that ends in Y. NVIDIA is going to be up there. Almost 500K, 497,000. Now the question is, what order are our top 2 going to be in? Tesla and Apple. Has Tesla managed to usurp the big dog again? And the answer is no. Only 968,000 contracts for Tesla. I say only in air quotes out. That's a pretty good number for them. They're down, not much, only down about 0.25% right now. They've kind of been bouncing around today. They broke the 1,000 level briefly this morning, got to about 984 or so, back up to 1023 and change right now. That means the big dog still holding on to the crown. That is Apple. Good for 1.15 million contracts. They're actually selling off today as well. Hard to believe. Down to about 170. They got down to 168, looks like, and change earlier this morning, having rebounded off those lows a little bit, though, as well. 1.15 million. So perhaps not as much. You've seen Apple do a lot more, Tesla do a lot more on other active days, but still a pretty active day, all things considered. And we are on the cusp, listeners. We are on the cusp of a new earnings season. So if you've been smacking your lips, you've been waiting for those hot new earnings move results, earnings trade, and earnings season reports. Well, we got them for you. Hot off the presses from our friends over there at ORATS. Not a ton of new data there yet because we're kind of waiting for the big stuff to kick off later this week. Obviously, I mentioned we have Tilray today. Not a big one yet. Not till later this week. We got KB Homes popping off on Wednesday, Delta on Thursday. Then on Friday, it really kicks off. We got Citi, we got BlackRock, we got Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, all popping off on Friday. You know, when the financials pop off, that's when earnings season is really back into high gear. So I'm looking forward to seeing what all the data is going to look like this season. Matt's been pretty spot on in terms of his prognostications for what to expect out there. And he called the last season being kind of an outperformer, and it pretty much was certainly the best season we've seen since the start of the pandemic from an earnings vol perspective. And they will have to get him back on vol view soon so he can kind of do his earnings kickoff with us there. But a lot of big names popping off. Look at a couple of them really quickly. You can get these reports. They're up there now, freshly uploaded for you over there at theoptionsinsider.com. And then once again, you can't beat the price. It's all freaking free. Let's go to Delta Airlines. They're on the 13th before the bell. 41.5 is where they were trading as of the time of this report. They were pricing in about $1.70. In the past, they've moved about $1. So a wee bit of extra juice out there in Delta Airlines land. Citi, 14th before the bell. 65.75 is where they were trading. 218 is what they were pricing into their straddle. In the past, they moved $1.50. So extra juice there as well. Also about 70 cents. So similar level to what we're seeing from Delta. JP Morgan, 167.16 is where they were trading. They are pricing in 465. In the past, they've moved 326. So a hefty bit of extra juice out there in JP Morgan. Is that merited? Is that the smart play? Or is it time to crush vol like we did at the height of the pandemic again? I guess we'll find out later this week. Meanwhile, we have to find out what the Eye of Sauron has fixed its gaze upon. It is time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Odd Block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is going on out there in the unusual activity spectrum. Let's see what our Eye of Sauron has in store for us today, listeners. Let's see, where are we beginning our journey today? Oh, we're going to a newcomer. This is always fun to have newcomers hitting us up here on the Odd Block. This is NNOX Imaging. Ticker symbol NNOX, NNOX. This is based out of Israel. It is an imaging company out of Israel. Interesting. Let's see. Trading right now, 1261. They're having a bit of a rough day today. Looks like they're giving a little bit back today. Let's look. Yeah, about 2.75%. Let's look at them on the year. Oh, pretty rough year for them as well. This kind of mimics the chart we saw of Tilray and even Palantir. They saw impressive levels in the meme frenzy and then not so much since. This one a year ago was trading 51.62, so it's already off substantially, $39 or so from that level, so about 75%. But then it soared north from there in the meme frenzy in late January, same day actually as Palantir, the 27th, and Tilray, I believe. No, Tilray was a little bit later in February. They hit their high of 94.81. And then it was pretty much all straight downhill from there. By, let's see, March 4th, they were trading $36, so below where they started the year. And then they've kind of just been trending lower ever since, hitting their 52-week low pretty much today. Looks like 11.79 actually is where they were trading, I do believe, earlier today. So rough times here for NNOX Imaging. Let's see what our Eye of Sauron found. Oh, looks like someone had the foresight to put on some, dare I say it, Meafy puts. Well, in this case, maybe take off some meafy puts. But interesting stuff. We noticed a big block, 6,250. Well, the first thing we noticed actually was 6,900 of the May 12 half puts going up for $3.80, which is getting pretty close to that meafy territory. That was a 119 vol. Looked like paper was buying those, lifting the offer out there. Let's see. Yeah, they were offered at 380. They gobbled them all up about 7,000 times. The stock was a little bit lower, 11.99 when they put those up. We thought that's weird. Let's just send the Eye of Sauron back to see if there's any other component legs attached to this. And turns out there was. The May 20 puts also went up. Now, they went up out of sequence and a substantial amount of time apart from these trades, almost an hour, which is strange. But they do, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's probably a duck. This is probably related paper. Again, this is not the most liquid name out there. To see two big blocks of over 6,000 going up on the same day, probably related paper. We noticed about an hour or so later, the May 20 puts going up 6,250 times on the bid for $9.20. That gets certainly into meafy territory. And it looks like these were closing. There's some size OI on that strike as well. So weird that they would leg into that closing put roll, but that seems to be what they did. Either that or their broker put these up ridiculously late and out of sequence, which one of those legs we know was late. So could have been that as well. So we thought, you know what? Let's just make sure. Let's send the Eye of Sauron back one more time, third time, do a little bit more work. See if these puts were actually opened recently, the May 20s. And turns out they were. They were opened back on November 17th for $6.30, back when the stock was nearly $19, $18.93. So someone had the foresight, or perhaps just the terror, to come in when the stock was $19 and spend $6.30 for protection on the 20 strikes. So these are a buck and change in the money already. So an intriguing choice to spend that much money, roughly a third of where the stock was trading, pretty close to it, for puts that were already in the money going out to May. That was a strange one, but it seems like it worked out. That part of the trade, at least, they made roughly $1.75 million or so on those puts. And now, interestingly enough, they're not just taking it all off. They're going back to the well, and they're keeping it in May. They're not adjusting their time frame at all. And they're spending $3.80 of their profits, which is close to what they made. They made close to $3, about $2.90 or so on those puts. So they're spending more than what they made on this new opening position on the 12 half strike. So this thing's got to continue plummeting to naught for these puts to make money. So Mr. Meatball, a lot to unpack here. First off, your thoughts on someone spending over $6 on some puts for a stock that's below $20, and then actually making money on that trade, and then taking that money and putting it to work yet again, a second time on a more out of the money strike, or this time at the money strike, and this time spending roughly a third of what the stock is trading for, once again for more puts, sir. What say you?
Yeah, pretty interesting. So this initially did go up as a spread, but something was wrong with the pricing on the 12 halves or something. So they took it down and re-put it back up. That is why there's such a spread between the
That would make more sense, yes.
Yeah. And then the other piece that's interesting is, this customer was right. And they are taking most of their profits and more and buying more of these. So you got to wonder whether this is going to $7.50, because the way this customer traded right the first time, this thing could be heading significantly lower. This is an ugly one and should 100% be on our to-be watch, because this thing has just been on a one-way trip lower since peaking out on November 3rd at 26.96. It's lost more than 50% of its value. A year ago today, it was trading at over $50. Peaked out during Meme Madness at $95. So this thing has been taken out to the woodshed repeatedly.
These are intriguing choices, buying these meaty puts to do this. It makes you wonder if they're just a shareholder. But if you're a shareholder, you're that scared, get the hell out of the stock. Maybe they can't. But I don't know. These are strange choices to keep going back to the well on these extremely meaty puts and have them also pay off is an interesting one. We're going to come back to this one, definitely. What do you guys think about this one getting beaten up to high heaven, listeners, and someone spending a lot more money? 380 puts. These are not cheap for a stock that's $12.50 right now. That's an intriguing thought. You think this has more downside to go? You going to dive into this one? What are your thoughts? Hit us up. Let us know. Let's go out to another newcomer. I like when the newcomers come across our radar here. Eye of Sauron, looking far and wide these days. All right, next up on the odd block, we're moving away from Israel and all the way out to Uruguay, to everyone's favorite Uruguayan fintech company. This is dLocal, ticker symbol DLO, specializing in cross-border payments to emerging markets. So if you had Uruguayan fintech on your odd block bingo card today, then give yourself a point. Trading right now, $29.50, taking a drubbing today, off about $1.60, a little over 5%. On the year, let's see, this one had not quite the same trajectory as the other one, even though net it kind of works out to about the same. Last year it was trading $32, so it's about back to break even as opposed to losing money like our other friend NNOX was. Then it caught the rise as well. It didn't rally though as aggressively. Also looks like they may have IPO'd in the middle of last year, because my data on this one only goes back to June. So it doesn't look like they were listed in the meme madness out here, which also could attest to why this name didn't have the exact same trajectory. But they took off pretty quick. By July 6th, they were trading $48.19. And then by August 24th, they hit their high for the year of about $73.50. Hung out there for a little bit until late September. Then they started selling off. By October 22nd, they were back to $47.50. And then they fell off a cliff in mid-November. They went from $47 on the 16th to, 17th, they were trading $35. And then by the 23rd, they were trading $30 again. So they kind of got clipped very recently. It took another leg down recently as well. On January 3rd, so the beginning of the year, they opened at $35.50 and quickly sold off to $28.50. And they're kind of bouncing around in that range now up to about $29.61. So they've gained a little bit of it back from the start of the year. But so far, though, the last few months, not exactly been a good story here for dLocal. I guess cross-border payments are not exactly a hot item right now. But let's see what our Eye of Sauron found. A little bit more put action. This time, though, completely the other side of the script, listeners. We got someone coming in for 6,500 of the Jan 25 puts. So these are expiring in a few weeks. These are about $4.50 out of the money, going up through the bid. They were pretty aggressive on these. They were bid for 65 cents. They said, we want 6,500. We're going to go all the way down to 54 cents to get these done. If you're wondering, that's still almost 100 vol. It's about a 93.5 vol. So these are still pretty rich. The stock at the time was lower. It was $28.64. It has rebounded almost $1 from there. So they maybe they hit the bottom there. Interesting stuff. Either way, they got these off for, again, 54 cents, 6,500 times. The next earnings is in February, so there's no earnings juice in these. So this seems, Mr. Meatball, like a more straightforward line in the sand, someone coming in and trying to harvest 55 cents or so, 6,500 times. What are your thoughts on everyone's favorite fintech name, dLocal, sir?
Yeah, looks like a dLocal put yield sale. And it's for if you're interested in cross-border payments in Uruguay, then this is the put sale for you. And you are looking to pick up a decent amount of yield for 10 days. What is that? It's over 2%. And you're holding for 9.5 days. That's not a terrible yield if you have the stomach for this one, which is clearly a mover.
Yeah, you might sweat these a little bit, but you're right. Not a bad amount of juice for these bad boys. We'll come back to these ones as well. I got a feeling they're going to work out, but we shall see. They got a decent amount of premium, and if they end up buying it at the lofty level of about $24.50, it's not exactly the 52-week low, but it's not the worst price we've seen all year out there either. Now, speaking of things we've seen, let's go back a little bit. Let's pay off one of our names from our deep list of trades to watch list. So we're going back to October 25th now to everyone's favorite Chinese ADR. This is XPeng Inc., ticker symbol XPEV, XPEV. This is another Chinese electric vehicle manufacturer. There's a few of these floating around out there today. I won't tell you where the stock is yet. It's a bit of a spoiler. But back on the show on October 25th, we talked about a bit of a call palooza out here. This was in the height of the frenzy. Lucid and others were really blowing the doors off, and a lot of action. Obviously, Tesla lighting up everyone's tape every day out there. So all the EVs are hot. Chinese EVs also pretty hot. NIO's usually a frequent offender in our top 10. Ironically, not there today, I don't think so. One of the few days when NIO hasn't been up there of late. But back on October 25th, they were certainly all the rage as well. And someone came in and had to have themselves some upside. In particular was the Nove doubles, the Nove 55s that caught our eye. We saw a 3,000 lot going up for 88 cents pretty much right off the offer. Then 2,800 more for a $1.07 through the offer. Then 2,784 more for a $1.14 also through the offer. And they kept coming. They kept coming all day for a total of nearly 14,000 on the day. So they really liked these Nove 55 calls, and they kept paying loftier and lofty levels. They were always north of 70 vol. They got up to about a 75 vol on these bad boys. So they were paying up for these X-Peng calls. They needed a nice run, a nice pop for these things to happen. By the way, there were earnings baked into this. The earnings were on November 11th. And it looks like, unfortunately for this person or people, the stock didn't quite get where they needed to. Let's look at the chart here for a little bit and see how high it did get back on November 11th. This trade was obviously October 25th. And looks like on the 11th, that coincided with the near-term low for the stock. Got down to like 44.33 or so. Then it popped again on the 11th and 12th. Got up to, on the 16th, $50. So it was close, but not quite where they needed it to be. They needed it to be, obviously, listeners, by the 55 strike. Let's see, November expiration was the 19th. So they never quite made it, listeners. The stock closed on expiration at 46.89. So, yeah, well below. And if they had an extra week, because the next week, November 24th, the stock was trading about $55, 54.37. So an extra week, and they hit 55 exactly on November 30th. This is just a question of time frame, listeners. They just needed another week, and this bad boy would have worked out for them, or at the very least, they could have scratched this probably. But it looks like they, alas, did not. They did not have that extra week. So it looks like they dumped Mr. Meatball. I apologize. Looks like they dumped Mr. Meatball about almost $1.5 million, about $1.4 million on these calls, sir. Is that your takeaway as well?
That's what it feels like. Maybe this was against some sort of stock position or stock replacement, but sometimes you take a stab and it doesn't work, and that's what happened here. That's the danger of putting on this kind of bull call trade, and why people generally like to sell premium to get into these. At least some of the more nuanced people, because you go out, you spend a bunch of money on call, the stock does what you expect, and you still lose.
Yep, it's all a question of timing. In this case, they needed just one more week, listeners, and it would have worked out. Instead, you don't have to wait another week, because it's time right now, listeners, for the strategy block.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the strategy block.
All right, listeners, it's that time of the week, time to commence our options, wit, and or wisdom for the week with Uncle Mike's. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, what are your thoughts from our live chat suggestion earlier that perhaps we incorporate some championship wrestling from Florida or Mid-South? He says excellent wrestling from the 1980s in our guessing. Your thoughts on that? And then B, if you have time, sir, what's lighting up your tape in the world of strategy?
Hey, Mike, am I wrong? But didn't your old intro music sound a lot like Davey Boy Smith's lead-in when he was coming down the aisle? As I recall, it was very, very patriotic.
I think it was back when I was the man from the mountains.
Yes, indeed.
Does that sound about right, Mark?
It does sound familiar. It was very celebratory and not quite, rule Britannia, but along those lines.
For sure. Yeah, so in terms of bringing in some Mid-South and some Florida wrestling, I'm all for it. I mean, there's that would stretch me a little bit, not going to lie on that one, but we could definitely do that. Or here's the other thing that we could possibly do. Perhaps Mark and I could put Mark Longo, or maybe like one week I could be the guy to come up with the music, and then Mark versus Mark, and then the next week Mark versus Mike, or maybe we can switch it a little bit.
I'd be down for that. If you guys can handle the audio requirements to pump the music onto the show, I'd be down for that.
That part I don't know, but either way, we'll have to look into it.
It is not a small feat, let me assure you.
Not sure on that one, but we can figure it out. But anyway, today I want to talk about, for the strategy block, selling puts on a day like today. This is kind of like if we were to stay flat for the rest of the day today, this would be like a dream day for me to sell put spreads or puts. And the reason is that we have a down day and we have volatility going higher on the day. And so with this, if I didn't already have short puts on from last week, I'd be looking to sell more of them today. And the reason that I like this is because of the fact that we had an initial sell-off. And then with the initial sell-off with which we've actually bottomed out earlier in the day. At roughly 9:45 today Chicago time, we had our lows. And right now the market's kind of responded by not necessarily taking off, because we're still down on the day, but it's been relatively stable. And of course, since the show started, of course, the market rallied. So that's the key. If you need the market to rally, listen to the option block, of course. But I like this because if at the end of the day today, we were still kind of in the same area that we are right now, or maybe a little lower, maybe a little bit higher, I would really love it. Because number one, you have a down day. And if you have a down day, of course, that means the market has to continue to go down further before the put can hurt you. You already have a little bit of a down market in your favor. And if it goes down further, that means it's going to just have to go that much further before it can possibly hurt you. So right now we're down roughly 0.9% on the day in the S&P. If I were to sell a put, I could sell it 1% lower in theory than I could have earlier in the day. Now, the other reason I like it is that we have volatility being higher. And so remember when I said I could sell it roughly 1% lower? Well, of course, likely I could, but I can probably even sell it even lower than I normally would because volatility is higher. That's kind of a double whammy for when to sell a put option, or when I like to sell a put option. Now, the final part that I like about days like today is that I never want there's an old expression, never try to catch a falling knife. And so what that means is if the market's just free falling, you're trying to just buy it and hoping that it doesn't go down any further. Well, the graphic for that, or the visual for that, is if there's a knife falling and it's blade down, or blade up for that matter, you're trying to catch it where the handle is and not the blade. And that can be difficult to do, so you don't want to get stabbed by doing it. So when you have a free falling market, it's oftentimes not a great idea to try to catch that falling knife. When we have a day like today and the market rallies a little bit, or even continues to go a little bit higher than, or close to where it opened at, then you're not necessarily catching a falling knife. The market has shown that around the 4,600 mark, or in today's case, 4,582, that buyers have come in. And buyers have at least come in at that level, giving you reason to believe that they might, never guaranteed, but that they might come in if the market were to go down to that level again. So I like to sell puts on down days. And once again, the reason is that you'll get higher premium, or perhaps sell it a little bit further out of the money. But also, once the down day becomes a little bit more stable, then it makes it a little bit more easy to digest the risk of selling this put. Now, of course, you manage your risk, and once you're in, and whether you want to get out of your line in the sand, roll it up, roll it down, just get out, buy another hedge, whatever the case may be, that's a topic for another strategy block. But on days like today, towards the end of the day, are days that I like to look to sell some puts. And that is the strategy block for today.
All right. Intriguing times to be selling puts. Obviously, as we keep on rolling, it is time to go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, listeners, it's that time to go around the block where we tell you what we're keeping an eye on until we gather here together again on Thursday. By the way, listeners, if you want something to do between now and Thursday, in addition to listening to all of our sweet, sweet content between now and then, a lot coming off between now and Thursday, of course, you can head on over there to @Options, make your voice heard on our latest question of the week just went live before showtime, listeners. We thought it's a good time when we kicked off the week. We had VIX right around 22, a little bit shy of that. We had Bitcoin hovering around 40,000. Uncle Mike's been talking that down for the better part of a couple of weeks now. A WTI right around 78, of course, crude oil. And the S was a little bit shy of 4,600. So we thought we had to buy a 10% out of the money call expiring at the end of the year, December 31st, on one of these four. Which would it be? And intriguing stuff. The votes going hot and heavy. Let's go out to the meatball first. What is your thought on these, sir? B, what do you think our audience is voting for, more importantly? And then C, what are you keeping an eye on for the rest of the week, sir?
I'm going to say Bitcoin for both. And then for the rest of the week, we got those big financial earnings. We've got just about every bank reporting at the end of the week, along with, I believe, Alcoa, the beginning of true earnings season. That's going to be a big deal. And then I want to see what happens to the NASDAQ. And is there going to be some buying at some point? And especially in these high beta names. And I think, interestingly, when the selling stops in some of these mega caps and in the high beta, what is going to happen to oil and financials? I'm really interested. They've been very hot. Will that hold?
Will that hold indeed? So your vote was for Bitcoin for both. Interesting. Uncle Mike, same question for you. What is your vote in our poll? B, what do you think our audience is voting for? And C, what are you keeping an eye on until we gather here together, sir, on Thursday?
I only vote S&P. But I'll go with the audience for Bitcoin. And then in terms of what I am watching, I'm watching to see if we can hold this 4,600 mark in the S&P. I think it's going to be it's a even round number. We're going to watch to see if it can hold by the end of towards the end of the day today. And then also watching to see if the 10-year note has finally bottomed out in the near term, because it's been selling off at a pretty decent level the last week or so.
Are you perhaps saying it is time to get on the boat with the 10-year note, sir? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's always time to get on the boat with a 10-year note, whether you're long or short, but that's whatever the case.
That's a conversation for another day. Right now, Uncle Mike, I think you've spooked some of our audience. Only 8.7% voting for Bitcoin right now in our poll. That is stunning to me. It is losing by a country mile out there. So you clearly have spooked the folks away from crypto. Number 2 is WTI, 26.1%. Number 3 is VIX, 30.4%. And leading the dance right now, 34.8% of you say the S. So whatever flavor you want, SPX or SPY. We don't judge, of course, at that 10% level. We're talking over 5,000 in the S by the end of the year. Again, it's not the craziest thing. We've seen crazier things even last year. So intriguing stuff. You got the rest of the week to get out there and vote. Make your voice heard. At Options is the place to go to do just that. All right, everybody, that music means we've come to the end of this first foray, this kickoff show here for the network for the week. But if you need more in your ear holes, don't worry. We got you covered here on the network. If you're listening live, have a beverage, take a break. We have to readjust the live, bring on some guests for our upcoming. If you want to talk more about what the hell's going on in that mad nadir of crypto out there right now, the big sell-off, well, we got you covered out there. Coming up in a little bit, we've got our crypto rundown program. I'll be joined from the folks over there at CEX, Global Crypto Exchange out there, to see what they're seeing out there in their neck of the woods. Intriguing stuff across the board. Of course, we'll talk about the vol, the SKU, the OI, all that madness, and a whole bunch more in about exactly an hour on the crypto rundown. So join me for that. And of course, a lot of hot stuff coming up later on this week. We'll get to all that in a second. But first, let's go around the horn. Let's go back to the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian. Sir, if folks are intrigued, perhaps by the notion of a little thing called Tradeosaurus coming up this week, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, go to optionpit.com and register for our Trade Fest on Thursday.
He calls it Trade Fest, but we know the cool kids call it Tradeosaurus. So check it out. I've heard, a little birdie told me they may have their own knockoff version of Truckosaurus. It's going to appear on this. Sounds pretty awesome. Optionpit.com is the place to go. And Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, you slam crypto and you don't have Truckosaurus or even Tradeosaurus. But what can they get if they head on over to the land of wealth, sir?
Well, feel free to follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW. And then the other things with which you can visit my website, stcharleswealth.com, if you're looking for a financial advisor who is not fearful of the option product, but oftentimes embraces it. Or you can check me out on YouTube, St. Charles Wealth Management. Just released my 3rd YouTube video last week. Hopefully having another one this week, trying to get one a week. So I'm up to 50 by the end of 2022.
He's burning up the tubes there, listeners. Check him out. We'll, of course, endeavor to share those, get those up maybe on our YouTube channel as well so you folks can find them. Make a nice little playlist there for Uncle Mike's if you want to do a little bit of video-oriented options learning. Uncle Mike's got you covered. In the meantime, place to go to begin your journey, stcharleswealth.com is the place to go. Again, we got to get on out of here. Back again in about exactly an hour now with the crypto rundown. Going to break down all the madness, and there is a lot of madness in the world of crypto. Back tomorrow for our pro Q&A coming up there, listeners. Should be a good one. So everyone out there in the Secret Club, you should have already have received your newsletter yesterday with our guest for tomorrow, Mr. Nick Howard from Bantix. So get them all in about all things futures, options, strategy, trade, construction, analytics, all that cool stuff, skew, how all that works in those different products, and a whole bunch more. He'll be joining us tomorrow, Wednesday, of course, your double dose of options education, options boot camp, options playbook radio. Then we're back again on Thursday for episode 2 of your bi-weekly options extravaganza known as the Option Block. We'll see you then.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.